Sponsored by the Idaho Transportation Department.
This building will be 100 years old next April 16th, 2025. It was dedicated April 16th, 1925. It was built by the Union Pacific Company, run by the Oregon Short Line passenger train services for passenger trains that came on the track right next to this. That lasted until 1971, when all passenger train service was handed over to the federal government. In its heyday here, we had 6 transcontinental trains running through Boise a day. 3 going west, 3 going east. And then everything shut off in 71. Amtrak started running. And then Amtrak started up on the same track in 1977, used this depot for passenger services. And Amtrak stopped in 1997. And we have no more train service here in southern Idaho or in northern Idaho. When it started in 1925, it's when the first passenger train came through. It was running from Portland to Chicago, the trains were, or Chicago to Portland. And they would go down to Wyoming and catch the main transcontinental railway line down there. So they were large 20, 30 car passenger trains that were coming through. And there wasn't that much traffic getting on and off in Boise at this stop, but everybody really enjoyed going through Boise because of the position of the depot and the rail line. The entrance that you came into and left gave a great view of the mountains and the city. So it satisfied the local needs, but it was more of a national train that was going through. And when it came to this depot, the train, and stopped to let off or pick up passengers, the engine of the famous one, Portland Rose was the name of it, would stop at the next street up here, which is named Peasley. And you can see it outside as a distant stop sign for the cars. And the caboose for that train would be parked on the bridge over Vista. So that's what the size was like of the trains. It offered service from anywhere, Pocatello or, Glens Ferry, or up, in Nampa or Caldwell. It offered service for people in Idaho to jump on and pay a fee and jump off. But the train itself, run by Union Pacific, was a national train. They sold tickets in Chicago, Illinois for Portland. So people got on in Chicago, Illinois and ran that train all the way across Nebraska and Wyoming and then up to Idaho and across Oregon to get to Portland. In between, people could get on and off as well, but it was a national train. The private train companies, which were the train companies that were laid out in America in the 1800s, always had to get a license before they could build their train from the federal government. The federal government had a requirement that if they gave you a license as a train operator, you had to always have at least freight service and passenger service. So you could have trains that moved things, but you needed to have trains that moved people. And passenger trains never made a profit. The profit was always from freight trains. So for many years in the 20th century, the private train companies were lobbying back to the government to take away the requirement to have a passenger train, because they could be more profitable without passenger trains. And the government would say, nope, you remember the deal, you gotta have both or you don't have any. But finally in 1971, the government and national train companies made an agreement, and President Richard Nixon signed the law that created the National Train Operation. So it wasn't like they had to stop. People still wanted to ride trains, but the government finally realized, along with the train companies, that airplanes and interstate highways with cars in the 50s and 60s were taking away the need for passenger traffic. And it just wasn't getting to the point to where it was economically feasible for those train companies. And that's why it shifted from private companies to the federal government in 1971.